Picture this. You open your banking app right now, and the number staring back at you quietly decides whether you're okay or one flat tire away from panic. What if I told you the most shocking wealth statistic in America isn't about millionaires? It's about regular people with regular jobs who still feel broke. And the twist is, the economy can look strong on TV, while your life feels like it's getting more expensive every month. So today, we're doing something simple, uncomfortable, and insanely revealing. We're looking at what's actually happening in the average American bank account and why the headlines don't match the reality. First, let's hit you with a stat that sounds fake until you sit with it. The median bank account balance in the US is about $8,000. That means if you have more than $8,000 sitting in checking and savings combined, you're already ahead of half the country in liquid cash. Half. Now here's where it gets weird. On paper, things look okay. Markets hit record highs in 2025. Unemployment stayed low, inflation cooled, and yet, why do so many people feel like they're suffocating financially? Why does it feel like your paycheck has holes in it? Because the story isn't about one number, it's about pressure. It's about the gap between income and the cost of simply existing, and the gap has been widening for years. Let's start with the most brutal modern reality. Paycheck to paycheck. Around 67% of Americans say they're living that way right now. 2/3. And before you picture only minimum wage workers, zoom out. This includes people making six figures, engineers, managers, professionals with good jobs. It's about fixed costs, rent, mortgage, cars, insurance, groceries, childcare, medical bills, subscriptions you forgot you have. If your monthly costs eat your monthly income, you're functionally broke, even with a high salary. And it gets darker. Nearly 24% of Americans have zero emergency savings. Not a small fund, not a few hundred, literally nothing. So the moment life throws a normal adult problem, a dead battery, a broken tooth, a water heater exploding, it becomes a financial emergency. And that's the key word, emergency. Not because the problem is rare, because the buffer is missing. A society with no buffers becomes a society of constant stress. Now let's zoom forward in time, because the scariest part isn't today, it's tomorrow. A huge chunk of households have no dedicated retirement savings at all. None. Zero. And think about what that means. You're not building a future, you're negotiating with the present. You're not asking, how do I grow wealth? You're asking, how do I get through this month without the credit card screaming at me? And that's where the trap begins. When you can't plan long-term, every short-term decision gets more expensive. But inflation is down, people say. Sure. The rate of inflation cooled, but that's like saying the fire isn't spreading as fast after your house already burned. Prices are still dramatically higher than they were in 2020. Think roughly 25% higher across a huge range of everyday essentials. Groceries, rent, insurance, the stuff you can't skip. Meanwhile, many wages didn't rise 25%. A lot of people got 5%, 8%, maybe 10% if they were lucky. So the math doesn't work, and you can't motivational quote your way out of bad math. And here's a vibe check that turns into a data point. A big chunk of Americans say they expect their finances to get worse in 2026. People aren't dumb. They know what their bills look like. They know what groceries used to cost. This is what I call the split screen economy. On one side, people who own assets, stocks, real estate, retirement accounts, they had a great 2025. Their net worth went up. On the other side, people who live on wages and pay bills, they're fighting gravity. And the cruel part is that both realities can be true at once. So let's run retirement savings by age. If you're in your 20s or early 30s, median retirement savings are shockingly low. Think a few $1,000s. For ages 25 to 34, it's around $2,800. Then you get to the pre-retirement ages, and it still doesn't look comforting. Here's the brutal math. If you have $88,000 and follow the classic 4% rule, you're pulling about $3,500 a year, under $300 a month. That's not retirement, that's pocket change. So most retirees rely heavily on Social Security, and even that often isn't a luxurious number. It's survival mode with a smaller schedule. So if savings are weak, what's the other half of the equation? Debt. And debt is not evenly distributed. It's generational. Younger adults often carry student loans and car payments. Millennials often stack mortgages, lingering student loans, and credit cards. Debt isn't just a number. It's a monthly drain that kills your ability to build margin. And then there's the debt that acts like a predator. Credit cards. The average balance for people who carry debt hovers around $7,000, and nearly half of cardholders don't pay the full statement each month, so they're paying 20% interest, sometimes more. Let's make this real. Carry $7,000 at 20% interest, pay minimums, and you can get trapped for years, paying thousands in interest on things you already consumed months ago. It's like buying last year's groceries again and again and again. Now, why do people use credit cards like oxygen? Because they're filling the gap between paycheck and life. And that gap is created by the big four costs people can't dodge: housing, transportation, food, and healthcare/insurance. When those rise faster than wages, your budget becomes a game of whack-a-mole. You cut eating out, then car insurance spikes. You cancel subscriptions, then rent goes up. Housing deserves its own chapter because it's the pressure valve for the entire economy. If you rent, you already know, rent doesn't just take money, it takes options. And that's before utilities, food, debt, transportation, the stuff you need to function. Homeowners have a different kind of pain. If you bought years ago with a low rate, you might feel wealthy on paper because your home value climbed. And if you bought recently, your monthly payment might be brutal. A mortgage at 6 to 8% can turn a normal house into a monthly chokehold. So what are people doing in response? The number tells you. The personal savings rate is around 3.5%. Historically, it's been closer to 8% or more. Experts recommend far higher if you want real wealth building, but recommendations are a luxury when your budget is survival math. And this is why people feel gaslit, because someone says inflation is down while your grocery receipt says, nice try. Someone says the market is up while your bank account says we are not participating. Someone says wages are rising while your landlord says rent is rising faster. It's not that people don't understand economics. It's that they understand their own reality more than they trust headlines. So here's the closing punch. If you feel behind, you're not alone, and you're not crazy. Many people are living with tiny buffers, heavy monthly obligations, and price levels that rose faster than their income. The economy is not your life. Your life is your cash flow, your debt, your savings rate, and your margin. That's the scoreboard that matters. And the moment you stop comparing yourself to inflated averages and start building margin, even small margin, you start escaping the trap. If this video gave you clarity instead of panic, do me a favor. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications.